Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our open book. So good to be with you tonight. We have a conspicuously and even certifiably funny man with us tonight. By the way, I hope he doesn't disappoint us. John Kenney, great humorist, won the
Darling, that's cruel.
won the Thurber Award, and he's written just a wonderful novel that I really liked. I See You've Called In Dead. And it begins when Bud Stanley, who is a professional obituary writer, has a night from hell and posts his own obituary by mistake. A very fanciful one where he says, I get to read it this time. Bud Stanley, the first man to perform open heart surgery on himself, died today in a hot air balloon accident. He was 44. His wife, Miss France, has confirmed the death.
You have so much in common.
Well, I am married to Miss France. So let's bring in John Kenney now from here. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
And firstly, quite an obit he writes for himself. Is he projecting the life he wishes he's had, or what?
Well, I think too many sips of Lagavulin that evening might have muddied his mind a bit.
Yeah.
As you said, as the book opens, he's had a really bad blind date. He sort of hermited himself in the 2 years since his wife left him, and he's lost his compass a bit. And what triggers him writing his own obituary in a not very intelligent way is getting an email from his ex-wife saying that her mother has passed away.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those late night decisions that sound really smart and then are just spectacularly dumb. Yeah. And so I think he's trying to imagine a better life than the one he's living.
He's fired, but why can't he be fired?
Well, he can't be fired because his obituary has triggered to his massive Associated Press-like company the fact that he is dead, and the company can't legally fire a dead person.
You know, we of course talked on our show on Saturday, and it was great. And I confess that one of my favorites was the man who both hired him and fired him, but couldn't fire him. And they have a drink together. Tell me a little about him.
So,
More than a drink, actually.
Bud's boss and the scion of the grandfather of the company is an old school newsman, and I majored in journalism and English literature at UMass Amherst and wanted to be a journalist, and was dissuaded by a family friend, which it's one of two regrets I have in life. I love Howard because I'm one of those strange people who still loves newspapers and still likes to get my hand on an actual newspaper, even though I read it online most of the time. But Howard is a true believer in facts and in human stories, because I think at its best, me telling you this is a little like me telling my wife during childbirth to push harder. You know this better than anyone in America. It's all about human stories, and what Howard still believes in is that the news is not facts, it's what's behind them, it's the human stories, and Bud has forgotten that. And if there is anything in a newspaper where you have an obligation to tell a human story, I think it's in an obituary.
Howard says to him, I mark this, you are an obituary writer who does not understand the first thing about life. Wake up. Tell us about the funerals he begins to go to, because it begins with his, do we say former mother-in-law?
Yeah, former mother-in-law, and so Bud and his best friend, his life guide in a way, an older gentleman named Tim, who was in an accident many years earlier and is now in a wheelchair, but is a man who just he can't get enough of life. He loves the arts. He loves people. He throws a sort of Gertrude Stein-esque salon in his Brooklyn townhouse every few months. And at the ex-mother-in-law's wake, where Bud gets to see his ex-wife and her new and far better looking husband.
He's also got a cute accent, right?
Well, he's got an English accent, and as my wife says, anyone with an English accent is 30% more attractive.
Yeah.
So it goes disastrously for Bud at the wake, but outside, as he's waiting for Tim, he meets a woman, and they get to chatting, and she says, why are you here? He said, well, it's my ex-mother-in-law. And he says, why are you here? And she said, oh, no reason. She said, Tim doesn't understand. Bud doesn't understand this. And he says, so you didn't know the deceased? And she says, no, never met her. And Bud says, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this. She said, well, this is my new thing. I go to the wakes and funerals of strangers. And Bud says, why do you do this? And she says, because it's the secret. And he says, to what? And she said, you're going to have to find out. And he's intrigued for two reasons. One is because she seems very intelligent, and two, she's very pretty. And so she says a name, and so that's the catalyst for him wanting to do this thing. And what happens is he is very intrigued by the sort of both the sanctity of these holy places, but also the awkwardness and the tension and the thing I think a lot of us possess, which is we don't have a vocabulary for death and for grieving. Mostly it's this thing we dip our toe in and want to get back to our car quickly. Yeah. So it's his journey with Tim at the wakes and funerals of people he's never met.
What made you decide to make the central character an obituary writer?
When I started the book, it was a different story. It was two friends who were in midlife, and things had not gone nearly according to the hopes and plans. And I just had jotted down obituary writer. My first novel, Truth in Advertising, the character is a copywriter at an ad agency, and the second novel is a news writer, anchorman, and because I'm so clever and can imagine distant things other than my own writing career, everyone's been a writer, because I have no imagination to speak of. But it was not central to the early draft. And then I dismissed that draft, and I was so intrigued by the notion of obituary writing. I talked to a couple of obituary writers, and there's something about them. I think when we talk Saturday, I think I mentioned that I grew up in Boston, and my parents would read the Boston Globe, and it was the first thing they would turn to. They called it the Irish Sports Page. And there was something about the way they read it and would talk and sort of maybe chuckle a bit, but also felt something. As a kid, I didn't understand. I was like, they're dead, but you're talking about them like they're alive. And I loved that tension, because I think the best obituary is it brings a person to life. And I'm not just talking about the big, wonderful ones on the front page of the Times when Henry Kissinger dies. I'm talking about the people in the towns we grew up in who it surprises us, but if it's done right, we remember things about them that keep them alive. There's that I believe it was the ancient Egyptians who said we die twice, the first time when we die, and the second time when people stop saying our name. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that an obituary does.
We have a question.
We have a question from S.R. O'Brien. Will the diminishing of print kill off obituaries?
I don't think it will any more than it has killed off newspapers or good journalism. I think it's simply a different medium. And I say that with hope and perhaps naivete, because I'm the last person to speak intelligently about technology. But I think obituaries really matter to us. It's an ancient thing to want to tell the story of someone's life. For a long time, I think we told it verbally, and then we started putting it in newspapers, and I can't imagine it'll go away. I think it matters too much to people.
I'm going to risk something. Can I get you to talk about your brother? Because
absolutely, yeah.
He, it's the end of the book. He has the best, can I call it a one-liner observation since either that, was it Oscar Wilde who said either that wallpaper goes or I do?
I forget who it was who said, and I might have said this Saturday, but I just love it. It was a famous person who was at death's door, was quite aged, and was getting morphine. And this is in the final minutes of his life. And I think his last words were, "I want to feel this good for the rest of my life." Which I just love. And the other great one, of course, is Woody Allen's gorgeous joke where during his stand-up years, and he points to his watch, and he says, "You see this watch? My father, on his deathbed, sold me this watch." I mean, it doesn't get better than that. There's a perfect construction right there, which I wish I could take credit for. But the story, my brother Tom, I'm one of five. I said that the other time too. I have five brothers. I'm one of six boys, no girls. Big Boston Irish Catholic family, and Tom was the impetus for this book. He died in 2019 of pancreatic cancer. He had been a firefighter. It's all he'd ever wanted to be. My dad was a firefighter, both grandfathers, Boston firefighters, all in the rescue. And Tom was at 9/11 as a rescue worker. He was on the Massachusetts FEMA team, and as I know you know, a lot of rescue workers during that time, breathing in that tremendous toxicity, fell ill in many ways. And for Tom, it was pancreatic cancer. And so it was a quick and a merciful end, thank God. He was surrounded by his two grown daughters and his wonderful wife, who's a nurse, and in no pain. And so my brothers and I have been visiting him and doing what we do best in my family, which is making fun of him and criticizing him and abusing him verbally. And so we would visit every few weeks and get together and talk about different things. And I am the least funny of the six Kenney brothers by far. I think Tom was probably head and shoulders the funniest, but all of my brothers are really funny guys and all great guys. And so I arrived first that last time, and Tom was sitting in a chair, and he had a blanket over him, and thinner, but still very much himself. And we chatted briefly, and I heard a car pull into the driveway. And I looked out, and it was the other four brothers. And I turned to Tom and said, "The others are here." And without taking a beat, he let an arm fall off the chair, head fall to one side, and trying to keep this Buster Keaton stone face, but there's a little grin coming through, said, "Tell them they're too late." And I reacted the same way you did, Scott. And there was something so gorgeous about being able to laugh in the face of the great and terrifying unknown. And just 2 weeks before he would pass, but he was, as he said, "I'm not afraid to die. I wish I had more time." I don't want to, but I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
He had lived the life he had wanted to. And I say that as someone who has ebbed and flowed in that area. And it was remarkable to be around him at the end. It's funny, I don't know how to speak about death, and that was what was intriguing about it. And I remember saying to my editor at the time, I want to write a funny book about death, and she said, that's a heck of a pitch. What else do you have? And in the research for it, there's this 3,000-year-old epic Indian poem, the Mahabharata, and I pray I'm pronouncing that correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. And there's a section within it, I believe the pronunciation is the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
One character says to the other, what's the greatest wonder in the world? And the answer is, the greatest wonder is that every day people die, but we walk around thinking we are immortal. And I know we spoke a little bit about this, but I have many times in my life flitted around like there would be tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And if I've learned this much, and if I've learned just a tiny bit, it is to just try to remember the silly slights and the dumb estrangements and the ego-driven pain. It's so hard, and I say that as someone who has experienced all of that BS, that I was in the room with Tom, and I was recently 2 months ago with my brother Michael, and man, is death the greatest teacher about life. It's just the best. And
your brother Michael is no longer.
Day, Scott, to the extent that we can find some humor in it. Man,
you lost your brother Michael too?
I did. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God bless. I'm sorry.
He was one of the older ones. Thank you. He was big, handsome Irishman. He was a hockey player and just tough as nails. He would, he could knock you to the ground and then help you up and laugh and buy you a pint. Just a great guy. And he was diagnosed with glioblastoma. Came out of the blue. And again, we were blessed because he was in no pain, and we would make fun of him halfway through it. We'd be like, do you just want attention? Because you don't seem like you have a brain tumor. And he was, so that was 2 months ago, forgive me. And his daughters, oddly enough, asked me if I would write his obituary. And you being the journalist you are, I know you've written a million different things. I'd never written a real obituary. I've written comical bad obituaries, but I must say it was much harder than I thought. And then I got lucky and was able to sort of channel his life. But I wouldn't want your listeners to think, oh my God, this guy's got a lot of bad luck. I think the good luck has been in being with these people and listening to these people and seeing how they went through this thing that awaits all of us with such grace and beauty and humor. We all went out to dinner and we were sitting there and the waiter came by. It's 6 of us. And I think he might have started with me or one of my other brothers. And Mike said, sorry, I have a brain tumor. Could you start with me, please? but it's like, and we're dying laughing. And the poor waiter, this young kid, is like, oh, what? But that mix of, there's two emotions in a way. There's the profound and there's the ridiculous. And when they can coexist in a story, in a day, I find it pretty wonderful.
Can I tell you something that my mother said on her deathbed? Wasn't her last remark. but it would. First few days, I stayed in the. I mean, I wrote a memoir, but this first few days, I was staying in the hospital room and hoping that something would change, and then it became apparent that these were her last few days, and she, was reconciled to that, and she just looked up at one point and said, "I don't know why it's taking so long. I guess I'm just late for everything."
That's just gorgeous. That's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it was really nice. Look, John, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much. I'll mention again just a great novel, I've Seen You Called In Dead by John Kenney, and so good to talk to you about so much tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Turn to those people who are with you tonight and who you love, and let them know that you love them. I love you, darling. Can I say I love you to
the cat?
Yeah, to Daisy and Gato and.
I don't even know where Cat is.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that one, Scott, because when you said "I love you, darling," I was about to say back to "I love you, sweetheart." So I got confused with the other line there. So.
Oh, I was speaking to my wife, but thank you, and I'm very fond of you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
This has been a beautiful open book.
It's wonderful.
Thanks so much, John.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Sign off. Don't sign off. You sign off. Don't
All
want
right.
him to sign off.
She'll sign.
I sign off.
You sign off.
Okay.